Hey guys, it's JD with the Real Estate Jam podcast. We're glad you're here. Today we have a pretty good episode with a individual named Doug Nordman. He is a retired military member, and we have a pretty good conversation talking about financial independence and everything from how to make that work for you and what that actually looks like, all the way to how to kind of get your kids on board and everything really in between. It's a great episode. If you receive any value from it, go ahead and like, share, and rate us on your podcast app, and let us know how we're doing. Enjoy the show.
They don't want what we know out there.
How a person can go from really almost nothing to becoming a millionaire by owning rental properties.
He would always buy these flip houses, and I just remember thinking, this guy is crazy. Why would he buy that house?
In the past decade, there's been a huge surge in the peer-to-peer short-term rental market.
Become an insider, so you have to know the rules before you get the game.
Every second counts, so make every second count.
Welcome to the Real Estate Jam. Whether you're just beginning or the best of the best, we're glad you're here. We will share successes, failures, and strategies for the action-taking real estate investor. And now to your hosts, JD, Annabel, and Melissa.
All right. Well, it's another exciting episode today. Another one of our favorites. We have a guest here with us today. I have Doug Nordman. So he is a military retirement expert. He's the owner of the Military Guide. He's been helping veterans achieve financial independence, and he himself retired at just 41 years old. He's now on a mission to help others reach that same goal. So Doug, thank you so much for being with us today. We're really happy to have you, and we can't wait to hear from you.
Thanks. I enjoy watching your journey there with real estate.
Yeah, we appreciate it. So tell us a little bit about your background in service, and kind of when you realized that you're going to focus on financial independence.
I retired from the Navy submarine force. My wife, Marge, is also a combination of active duty and reserves, and she's retired from the reserves awaiting her pension. I retired and started my pension in 2002, so I've been retired for just over 17 years. We didn't really have any guidelines or goals for financial independence. Back in the 1980s, everybody was going to work a traditional career until age 65 in Social Security. What changed our lives was in 1992, we started our family, but also in late 92, early 93, the book Your Money or Your Life was published. And today everybody says, oh yeah, that's a classic. I really understand that. That's a fantastic book. But back then it was more of a hippie lifestyle kind of strange concept. And so nobody really understood it very well, but we realized that we had a high savings rate. Most of the savings we had accumulated in the 80s were due to just being frugal and enjoying life without necessarily spending a lot of money. And by the time that book came out, I looked at that chart where your income rises as your expenses drop. I realized we were going to cross that line in the next decade. And then, of course, in 1996, The Millionaire Next Door came out, and that pretty much put a fire underneath knowing that there are other people like that, and knowing that we would be able to realistically reach financial independence. We reached our FI in late 1999. We didn't realize that at the time. I don't know if you followed the details of the math of financial independence, but the study that came up and said that the 4% safe withdrawal rate is really going to work. That study didn't come out till 1998. And, 1999, when we reached our financial independence in the internet bull market, everybody was financially independent in late 1999. But it's worked. We retired to my pension in 2002 with our investments in a 4% safe withdrawal rate. And we, in 2002, were going right through the recession that followed the internet bull market. We also went through the Great Recession of 2008 and 2009. Survived all that. Everything worked out fine. Today, our withdrawal rate has actually gone down because our investments have grown fast enough.
Wow. So what are you doing with all your time now?
I get that question a lot. What do you do all day? You must be so bored and lonely and unfulfilled. And the answer is no, not at all. Generally, I start every morning with a surf forecast. I mean, I know that sounds, stereotypical Hawaii guy, but I really do, because you have to keep an eye on the surf forecast and know when the surf is good and go out there and do it. I'm surfing 2 or 3 mornings a week. And then the rest of the time, I'd found out in retirement that I do enjoy writing a lot. I'd always been posting to forums, even back in the 90s with the ancient Usenet and those kinds of, you're smiling again, JD. But I've kept that up over the years. And I wrote the book on military personal finance, started that around 2004, 2005. We published in 2011. And I've kept on writing, and I keep on blogging. I really enjoy that. There's also home improvement. My wife and I are both big home improvement junkies, I guess you would say. I'm mostly, sewage, electrical, mechanical. She's, of course, decor and design and all the other things that go in with that. And so we've developed quite a few skills. Of course, YouTube in the last 10 years has dramatically accelerated that learning curve, and that's much better now than it was in the 1980s and 1990s.
Mm-hmm. It's funny you should say that, JD. One of our very first real estate project that we took on, I didn't know anything about it yet. I hadn't read any books, and he says, "Do you trust me with this house?" And I walked into it and I said, "I don't know if we can handle this house." But you're right, with YouTube, and of course we hired out for the dangerous things like electricity and HVAC. But outside of that, really, he found a good mentor, and we watched a lot of YouTube. And really we turned that house into, something that was unlivable into a really, really nice, affordable rental house that we have had the exact same tenants in now for going on the 4th year. So
that's fantastic. Mm-hmm. And that's the rehab where you turn a home into a real house.
Yep, exactly. So Doug, can you tell us a little bit, I know you gave us a little bit of your background. Where are you when it comes to real estate, or what experiences have you had in the real estate market?
We're what you would call accidental landlords or reluctant landlords. When we started our careers back in the 1980s, that was the time in history when real estate always went up. And back then, the conventional wisdom on military families was to buy a home at every duty station. And that way, by the time you finish your career, you'd have a rental property in every duty station. And hypothetically, you'd be financially independent. We all know that the reality is a little more nuanced today, but that's what we did back then. By the time we ended up in Hawaii, we managed to buy in Hawaii at the peak of the market. And we did not hold any other properties at the time. We were putting all of our money into our Hawaii home just because of the down payment and the expense. And we bought in 1989. In retrospect, here on Oahu, that was the top of the market. And right after that, the Gulf War in Kuwait and the real estate recession in Japan caused Hawaii to go into a 10-year real estate recession.
Wow.
Our home had started out at a high price and gone from a high price to a ridiculously high price. And then by the time the recession bottomed out in 2000, it was worth less than what we paid for it 10 years ago.
Wow.
But the other advantage of owning real estate in a recession is that you can go shopping and find some bargains, which we did. And so the house we're living in now, we've lived in for the last 19 years. It's the best house I've ever owned. We bought it at a substantial discount, a lot of sweat equity over the years, a big rehab. We're very happy here, and we've kept the house that we started out with. We've rented that out for most of the last 30 years. And over those years, I've learned a lot about property management and tenant screenings and all the other things that landlords go through. But the most important thing I've learned is that you have to become a landlord of an investment property, not just become the landlord of the home that you were living in at your last duty station, and now you're hoping to rent it out. So most of the time I spend with military families talking about real estate is about investing, not buying your home and then having to rent it out when you move to a new duty station.
I think that's a really great piece of advice that a lot of the experts don't really explain that to, especially to the younger enlisted guys. They're saying, hey, go out, use your VA loan, buy this house. One of that was exactly what we were trying to do. But one of the things I realized is that your network that is required to run a successful rental business, you pick yourself up and you move every 2 or 4 years, and you have to reestablish that. But those are relationships that don't build over the course of 2 years is just barely enough time to trust somebody with your finances and to be able to have open and honest conversations with them. So if you're moving every 2 years, you're having to do that over and over again. And what, that was our goal, but it ended up that I think that's the wrong way to go about it. I think you need to be more strategic and deliberate with where you're picking your properties. Your base might be a good rental place, a good rental area. But if you're not purposely choosing that, if it's just an accident, then that's not the right way to go about it.
An accident, exactly. And there's also been the rise of the World Wide Web. I mean, back then you're buying a home in every duty station was because you really could only look at a few zip codes to figure out where you wanted to invest. But now you can build that team anywhere in the country and keep a long-term relationship going without having to be there every week. I think that it's given us all much more opportunities to go buy where it makes sense to buy. You guys are probably spread out all over the country with your investments, with your rental properties. Is that correct?
Well, we are, but we're trying to focus it more to one geographic location. We have a couple that are doing really good by their own, but if they started to turn down, we would sell them, or at least me and Annabel would sell them and come back down to where we know the place that we purposely picked, the Panhandle of Florida, because that's where we're developing those relationships. That's where we're meeting people, and that's where we're building a phenomenal team. And so if the one duplex that I own in Great Falls, Montana, starts to slip or I get in a
hotbed of real estate.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's been a really secure. There's my property management team up there. Mason Properties are phenomenal. But I'm only keeping it because it's such a no-brainer, easy, effortless piece of real estate.
I think you'll do the math too. I mean, you're going to do the math when you buy, and you're going to keep doing the math as you have tenants go in and out, or as you need to do rehab or repairs. And if it makes sense to keep it, then why not? Especially if you got the property manager.
Yep, that's exactly right. So I know that you said that you go around and you talk to military people. Why that's not the best idea, but since we have such a big military network, I'm wondering if you had any other regular financial advice that you could give some people kind of just starting out or just looking at these kind of questions. I know when I was 18, I didn't care about any of this, but when I got to 22, 23 and started to look at having a family, these things really started to make sense. I think I would have been better off if I'd have started looking at them a little bit earlier. Do you have any advice for those kind of guys?
And then I never cared. He had to teach me to care. He had to show me how important it was.
It's not important that you start early. That's that old Chinese proverb: the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago, but the second best time is today. And I tell people, when you get to the point in your military career where you've survived recruit training, you're at your first duty station, you're just starting to get qualified, that's the best place to start. And that's where it's very straightforward. It's not easy, but it's straightforward, is to just track your spending. And I use the analogy of joining a gym for a New Year's resolution. You're not going to go to that gym and work out for 3 hours in the first week in January. You're also not going to cut back the diet that you eat to just 1,700 calories a day right away. You're going to work up to these things. And it's the same with tracking your spending. You just track it however is easy for you, whether that's on paper or a smartphone or computer software. However you do it is what works for you, that will you do regularly. And when you track your spending for a few months, then you go back over that. And I've seen this epiphany over the years, probably 1,000 times from readers. When you track your spending and look back at the data a few months later, you see where the waste is. You see where you've been spending your money, and it doesn't bring you value. And value is a relative term. What's valuable to me and my spending is not the way that you're going to spend and find your value. So I tell people, go back, look at your spending, just cut out the waste. And once you've cut out the waste, then your rate of spending, your savings rate, starts to rise as your spending declines. And when that savings rate starts to rise, that's the next thing you do is invest. And I completely understand some people are uncomfortable with putting all their savings into the stock market every paycheck or whatever your asset allocation may be. And so if you're the kind of person who enjoys investing in real estate, then that's absolutely what you should do. And I know several service members who do a combination of real estate and a stock market, others who are completely into real estate. They don't even really want to have any investments in the stock market other than their 401k, the thrift savings plan. It's a comfort factor. It's got to be sustainable. It's got to be what works for you and what you feel good about doing, and that you can sleep well at night, and that your spouse thinks that this is probably going to work. Domestic harmony is very important here, not just math and logic.
Right.
And then keep doing that for as long as you can. Now, the math behind the 4% safe withdrawal rate and reaching financial independence, the math says that if you can get to a 40% savings rate, then you're probably going to be financially independent within 20 years. And by that savings rate, I mean just having a pile of assets. That 40% savings rate will pile up at a certain rate over the years and compound. And at the end of about 20 years, you'll be financially independent, even without the military pension. And so that's very powerful to people, realizing that they can do quite a bit to reach financial independence without having to sit around and wait for the pension or the health care. And all that's within grasp. And that, when I do seminars in person with a military command, I walk into a room and say, I am not the retention team. I am not here to help you stay military. In fact, I'm here to help you get out. And that's exactly the way it works, is people realize that with a high savings rate, with prudent investments, you will reach financial independence, and you do not have to stay on active duty. You do not have to gut it out to 20.
Yeah. Right.
That sounds like some personal experience there.
Yeah. Both your dad and the kid's dad, right?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
And it's empowering for everybody to sit there and realize that. And usually when I'm talking to people in a seminar, I've got 3 levels of attendees. There's the people who've just gotten to the unit, just finished recruit training. Maybe they think they're going to go for 20 or 30 years. Most of them are beginning to think they've made a horrible mistake. And so being told to track your spending and to reach a high savings rate, they're on board with that. Just as soon as they finish paying off that hot Camaro or that pickup truck, they're going to go back and
brand new Harley Davidson.
That's right. If I hadn't had it in the shop, I'd be really able to do something with that. But the other group is about 8 or 10 years of service. And that's, again, where it's a critical time in your life. You've probably started a family. You're probably beginning to wonder whether you should stick around for 20. And all the people that you tend to hang out with on active duty are going to tell you, oh, yeah, you should stay till 20. You should get that pension and that health care. And you've got people at home depending on you. What we don't appreciate in the military at that point in our careers is that we have tremendous skills. We have tremendous human capital. And you guys know this from going out into the real estate world and being able to tackle a project and get it done. And you have that confidence that comes with tackling a project like that and getting it done and getting cash flow. But it's the same skills. You're planning, you're identifying a mission, you're persistent, you're overcoming obstacles, and the military has given you those skills. And it turns out that corporations in the civilian world will also pay you to do this stuff if you haven't reached financial independence yet. So that sings very loudly to that group at that 8 to 10 year point. And a very small minority of people in the military actually reach 20 years. The number is 1 out of 6. And so when I'm in that seminar, I'll always have somebody who's past 20 years, and they always know that they can retire, but they've been worried about that for one reason or the other. And so we talk about that transition from active duty to retirement, or active duty to just getting out, and try to talk through that to help them figure out when they want to do it. The point is that when you save for financial independence, you have choices, you have flexibility.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right.
It's not that you're going to reach FI like me and go out and surf all day and never earn another dollar in your life. It's that you're going to have the choice to do what you want to do with your life. And if you want to keep working for money, that's great. If you want to have a side hustle, especially a paying side hustle like real estate, then that's fantastic. But you have choices, and that high savings rate and that financial independence journey, wherever it takes you, gives you that flexibility and gives you those choices.
Yeah, I think that's a huge one for JD and I.
Yep.
A lot of times, people ask us, well, why are you doing this? What are you trying to establish here? What kind of empire are you trying to build? And and we're like, it doesn't even come down to all of that. For us, it comes down to, let's have a choice. We'd like to be able to give our family options as well. But we want to use our time how we'd like to use our time. hopefully sooner rather than later.
I don't
Exactly.
I don't even like stuff. So we don't do it because I want to buy stuff. I don't like stuff. I don't need it stuff.
Like he has the same pair of holy tennis shoes I have to replace every 2 years.
Yep. I hear that.
I just want to be able to choose to buy stuff if I want to. I don't want to, but I want to have that option. That's it.
Yeah,
it's all about.
Yep.
Or an experience, or a destination, a bucket list, having the time too. It's not always about money. It's about that time value, getting that time back
Well, it's trading your life energy for money, and eventually you're going to run out of that life energy. So you might as well use it in the way that you want to use it instead of being hostage to a paycheck. Yes, it's exactly right. And in military families, I tell people that you have an advantage that civilians don't have, is that you understand where the line is between frugality and deprivation. In military families, you go out there and you're going to be frugal, probably not much by choice. And eventually you're going to cross that line into deprivation because you have to. You have to get through the deployment or whatever the mission is or some family crisis. And in the civilian side, when people are trying to save for financial independence, there's an impression that it requires a sacrifice. If you're going to be frugal, then you're going to be eating out of dumpsters and recycling your toilet paper and never paying for anything again. And these are great analogies. I've had the time to think about it. But the point of frugality is that when you're frugal, it's challenging, it's fulfilling, and you feel like you're winning, right? If you feel like you can get through the month with a 40% savings rate and you've done everything you want to do and you feel like you're living a good life, then you're winning, you're challenged and fulfilled. Yes. On the other hand, military families are very familiar with how deprivation feels and very understanding of how to get out of that and how to avoid that. And deprivation is okay. I mean, it's a way to reach a goal in the short term. It's unsustainable, but it's great for that short-term goal. Yeah. And so if you understand as a military family where you want to draw the line and go back and forth across that, that's a very powerful tool to figuring out your journey to financial independence.
Yeah, absolutely. So how did you, JD and I actually just talked about this. How do you see, what changed your mindset, and then you talked about your daughter a little bit. How did you teach your daughter that mindset? Can you share with us a little bit of that mindset change and when that happened for you and how you try to show that to others?
With us reaching financial independence on our own, I mean, we were always frugal and our daughter was raised that way. So as we go shopping for groceries or as we go shopping for clothes or as we go shopping for toys, she sees the way that we live a frugal life. And, you're shopping at the commissary or you're buying food with coupons and to a young kid, 3, 4, 5 years old. That's interesting. That's what grownups do. And they want to imitate that. And so you talk about it and you teach them what you're doing. And when you take a kid to a garage sale, they can go out there and find the toy they want, and they can actually afford to buy it, unlike going to a retail store or Amazon. And so that's the way that Carol grew up, was with that frugal mindset of her mom and dad. And as we went through and learned more about financial independence, we started talking about that as well. And it's just talking. It's describing what you're doing and what your plan is. And you're also trying to reassure your family. When you get to the point where you reach financial independence and you come home one day and say, "Hey, kids, I quit my job," they're going to be a little concerned and they're not quite sure that's going to work out. So again, you tell them that you have a budget or that you have enough money and you think it's going to work. Now, to an 8-year-old, that's about all they need to know. That's maybe all they care about. Even teenagers that look like they're going to someday be mathematicians or engineers, they probably still don't really care very much. They just want to know that, you're going to not embarrass them in front of their friends. They want to know that they're going to have transportation and maybe a reliable allowance. And if that's cool, great, get out of my sight. Don't bother me anymore. I'm fine. But there's an age-appropriate level of understanding of financial independence at all ages. And the most important part of it is having the courage as parents to teach your kids to manage money. And there's a book by an author, David Owen. He wrote a book, The First National Bank of Dad. And in there he uses, and that's his point, is that you're not an ATM. But his analogy is that when you teach your kids to manage money, at some point they're going to take a $20 bill and light it on fire and run around the yard like they have a 4th of July sparkler in their hands. And they have to do that quite a few times because they're learning to manage money. They're going to make all those mistakes at managing money that everybody makes. And eventually they're going to work through the understanding of the math, and they're going to work through their feelings when they buy that really expensive toy that doesn't pay off, or they're going to lose something and feel really bad. And that's how you learn to manage your money, is by making all those mistakes. And to Marge and me, the attitude was we'd rather have those mistakes get made at home while we're all at home to talk about the mistakes, rather than in college or out there finding your way in the world. So we've always raised our daughter that way. Now, I'll be honest, this kid was tough to raise. And so I didn't see that genetic bomb coming, did I? But we realized very early on that we'd have to work hard to stay out in front of her and to keep her occupied and find things for her to do, because she was just a little fireball of intellect and energy, and she was wearing us out. But it all worked out. She's got that same mindset. She's predisposed toward that. And she's managed to maintain a high savings rate for her career ever since college. And even in college, she was very entrepreneurial. So it all worked out. And again, being in the military, one of the big jobs you do in the military is train people. I spent 8 years in the military at training commands, and I've trained literally thousands of officers and enlisted sailors to be able to learn the job I'm doing and then to take over for me, because, I want somebody to relieve the watch and put me in 4 section. I don't want to have to stand port and starboard duty for my entire life. And so the idea of training your kids to someday grow up and be responsible with their finances is very important, not just for their happiness and their well-being and their sustainable life, but it's also important for you, because they're going to be the people that are going to be probably helping you manage your finances when you're older. And I see you smiling now because you can't see that one coming as easily as you can at my point in life. But that's the whole idea of training, or the whole idea of teaching your kids to manage money. It's expensive. There's wastage. There's going to be a lot of mistakes, but the mistakes that they'll make at a younger age as they're growing up before they leave the house are far cheaper than ignorance.
Yeah. And then I understand that you and Carol are now working on a project together. Can you tell us a little bit about that and kind of what 2020 looks like for you guys?
Thanks. We're still working on this project, but it looks like it's going to actually pan out. I'm having a wonderful time. We go to small meetups called Camp FI, FI for Financial Independence. And it's not as big as FinCon. It's just, 50, 60, 70 people at a camp for a weekend. And at one of these seminars, I usually get up and I give a talk. And at one of these seminars, I gave a talk on investing in the 1980s and 1990s. And at the end of the talk, the first question I got was, okay, that's nice. I heard what you said, but tell me about how you're doing that with your kids. And at first I was babbling, trying to figure out what I was going to say, but I finally remembered a story about how we did something with Carol. And the next time I went to Camp FI and gave another talk, I talked a little bit about raising a financially savvy kid. And that really resonated with the audience. I was surprised. And we came home, Marge and I came home from the Camp FI a year ago, and we were visiting Carol and KJ at the time, staying in their apartment. And around the dinner table, we started talking about the Camp FI, and I said, a funny thing happened. They wanted to know how we raised a financially savvy kid. And Carol said, I know that answer. And she started talking about a story. And about 5 minutes into this dinner table conversation, Marge looked over at me and made that little symbol that she makes that means you better start writing this stuff down. So we took notes, we developed an outline, and we actually started writing the book. And it was at first just a project to record some family memories. Our son-in-law definitely wanted to learn more about this. He'd only been married to her for a couple of years by this point. But we brought these stories out, and Carol really lit up. And I have tremendously enjoyed writing a book with my daughter, because I'm telling my side of the story as the parent, and then she's telling us what really happened and what it really meant to her. We were nowhere near as brilliant as we parents thought. And it's all about how the kid perceives what you're doing and how it works out. So we spent the next year writing the book. And then at the last FinCon, we found a publisher with Choose FI Media. We've been through a couple of rounds of editing. I tremendously enjoyed writing the book with my daughter. It's still fun to edit the book, but editing a book is nowhere near as fun as writing a book. Anyway, that process, persistence, motivation, finish the mission. Yeah, that's going on right now. We expect to publish probably next spring. And the title of the book is Raising Your Financially Savvy Family for Next Generation Financial Independence.
Wow.
That's the whole story about how you can do this with your family. It's just us telling our stories of what worked for us, and hopefully you can try that in your family.
Yeah. And then so appropriate as Carol starts her family and you begin your journey as a grandpa.
Well, actually, as a parent, I refer to that as karmic payback. But yes, there is grandparenting too. But yeah, it's interesting now that you've always heard your parents tell you someday you'll understand when you have kids of your own. Well, now it's time.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to it. I know it's going to be awesome. I look forward to really helping teach those lessons to our boys as well.
All you can do is keep giving them the knowledge and talking about their feelings, and at some point they'll actually be ready to listen to what you say and learn from it. And that's different for every family. It's not going to happen when they're 3 years old, and it might not happen when they're 25 years old either.
Yeah, it might take it. Yeah, we respect and understand that.
I'm sure glad I was never like that in my 20s, but yeah, okay.
Yeah, I was never like that.
Yeah, I bet. All right, well, really wrapping up, what kind of advice would you give someone just starting, I think, in that journey? I know we touched on it, or what resource would you put them in touch with?
Well, if you're just starting out, either in a military career or just starting your family, we talk about all that stuff on my website, The Military Guide, and in blog posts. And the book will come out next spring. Now, when that book comes out, don't race out and feel obligated to buy it. We'll have plenty of copies of it in bookstores, and we'll have more material on the blog that goes with the book. That blog is yet to be named and promoted, but we'll work on that, and there will be no doubt what's out there when we get that thing going. For people that are just starting their military career, excuse me a second, we can edit that out. For people that are just starting their military career, once you finish that recruit training and you're out there at your first command, that's where you'll try to track your spending and figure out where the waste is. It's worth doing. But you're also distracted. You're going to be busy getting used to the new duty station, the new command. You're going to be getting qualified. You're going to be learning your job, maybe getting some promotion. There's a whole lot going on there. And the important part is to just develop a habit that you will sustainably keep up with. For example, tracking your spending and cutting out the waste. And then if people have questions, we have plenty of stuff on the internet, Facebook groups, Twitter, social media, places to go to learn about how to pick an asset allocation, how to pick what your investment savings rate, where you're going to put the money. The two biggest resources that I enjoy are a book by a guy named J.L. Collins, The Simple Path to Wealth. That's probably got 100,000 copies in print now, and I'd say most of them are in libraries. So go look for that at your base military library or your local public library. The Simple Path to Wealth will get you started on index investing. And as you guys probably know, for new real estate investors, after they feel like they've learned your story and gotten your advice, they're probably going to gravitate toward bigger pockets, right? Mm-hmm. And that's my go-to resource for everything real estate, just to learn from the experience or the mistakes of others, that I don't have to replicate that.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we really appreciate it, Doug. Thank you so much for being with us today. Yeah, we're excited about the next year, what it's going to bring for your family. And
I'm enjoying the ride.
Awesome. We're glad, and thanks for letting us be a part of it too. Hopefully we'll see you out there in Hawaii and maybe catch a wave or two one day.
Buy a ticket. This is a good time of year to do it, so you don't have to put up with whatever weather you got over there. And thanks again, Annabelle and JD. I hope everything's working out all right, and good to meet you, Melissa.
Thank you. Good to meet you.
Thank you very much.
Awesome. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Jam.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you for all you do.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. For more information and updates, check out our website, shorefrontrestorations.com, or find us on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn at Shorefront Restorations. If you have any questions, feel free to drop us an email at info@shorefrontrestorations.com. See you next episode.